Those who hide jade can obtain it in every inch. Those who hide their clumsiness will advance and retreat. Those who possess the country of Tibet will gain access to the world. Keywords of the novel. No pop-ups in Tibet, complete collection download of Tibetan TXT, latest chapter reading in Tibet. Chapter 1. Returning to the Tang Dynasty. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Returning to the Tang Dynasty. Yonghua is a famous impoverished area in Chang'an City, where people from all walks of life live in a chaotic and complex environment with constant disputes. However, generally speaking, the people do not sue and the officials do not investigate. There is a dilapidated small courtyard in the middle of the neighborhood, with a rammed wall made of mud mixed with wheat straw. There are 3 crooked houses in the courtyard. The courtyard door, riddled with wounds and holes, was even more tattered than the beggar's clothes, but there was a grand sign hanging on it. 1 stick, no one. It turned out to be a medical clinic. That morning, a woman walked briskly with a bamboo basket on her shoulder and an iron hammer in the other hand. It was a hammer weighing 20 pounds, and it was unknown which general had left behind a weapon on the battlefield. The woman was in her early 30s, wearing a cloth skirt with tightly tied black hair. She was wrapped in cloth and had a copper hairpin inserted diagonally. Time had not washed away her delicate and beautiful appearance, but there was a hint of murderous intent hidden between her eyebrows and eyes. Her appearance is definitely like a fairy in this slum, and many ruffians, although coveting her beauty, fear the hammer in her hand. The woman's name is Pei Sanyang, and she is the owner of the Ju Yi Guan in front of her. With her skillful medical skills, she is able to make a living in this impoverished area. Walking to the door, a neighbor shouted, "Sanyang, your little plum is sitting on the well platform again, it's very dangerous. Go and take a look." "Thank you, Mrs. Gu." Pei Sanyang quickened her pace and clenched the iron hammer in her hand even tighter. At this moment, by the well in the courtyard sat a young boy of 14 or 15 years old, not very old but very tall and strong, at least half a head taller than Pei Sanyang. He sat on the well platform, swinging his feet in the well, but his eyes were fixed on the bottom of the well, as if there was a secret path to another world at the bottom of the well. Pei Sanyang saw her son sitting by the well in thin clothes, feeling both heartbroken and angry. "What are you doing when you don't lie in bed?" She threw away the hammer, took 3 steps at a time, and quickly grabbed her son's arm. With tremendous strength, she forcefully dragged him down from the well. The young man angrily broke free from her hand and said, "Don't touch me. Who rarely touches you? If you have the ability, you can jump down and I promise not to stop you." "Munyang! Munyang!" Pei Sanyang shouted twice more, and an old woman came out of the easternmost room. "Oh! How did I come out? Hurry up and help the stinky kid in. Don't just recite scriptures all day, even if you run out, you won't know. It's all my fault." The old woman quickly stepped forward to pick up the boy and entered the room. The boy's restless emotions finally calmed down and he regained his sanity. "Thank you, madam." He lay on his small bed, his hands resting under his head, and let out a deep sigh. Li Yi still cannot face reality. Due to his failure in the civil service examination, he went to Mount Li alone to relax. However, when he went down the mountain, he accidentally stepped on it and fell into a pool of water. When he woke up, he actually arrived at the Tang Dynasty. Li Yi was momentarily lost and at a loss. Drink the medicine while it's hot." Madame Mu brought a bowl of steaming hot soup medicine, and her smile was full of kindness, reminding Li Yi of his long-deceased grandmother. When he was young, he often caught a cold, and his grandmother would always bring him a cup of medicine to coax him to drink. But this medicine is really too bitter. He has never tasted such a bitter medicine before, it's like a thick soup made from yellow lotus. "Auntie, I really don't want to drink this medicine, it's too bitter." "The medicine may be a bit bitter, but you need to understand your mother's hard work. She went outside the city to collect medicine and didn't close her eyes for days and nights to cook it for you. It was only after a few days that she finally pulled you back from the gates of hell. Without your mother, you would have died long ago. Moon Yang, stop talking, this stinky kid is ungrateful. Pei Sanyang said angrily at the door. Drink it quickly. Good medicine is bitter and beneficial to the disease. Drinking the medicine will slowly improve the body. Aunt Mu patiently advised him. Li Yi had no choice but to take the bowl and drink it in one gulp, even though it was so bitter that his eyebrows twisted together. He quickly took a glass of water from his aunt's hand and took a few strong sips to ease the bitterness in his mouth, before finally lying down heavily. The old woman secretly blinked at Pei Sanyang, and a slight smile finally appeared on her tense face. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye, and Li Yi had to accept reality and could not go back. He began to enter his own role in the Tang dynasty, just consider it acting. At the end of the play, the people dispersed, perhaps I could go back. Once he accepts reality, various doubts flood in. When is the Tang dynasty now? Which year? Who is his father? Aunt Mu said he almost got killed, so what's going on? That morning, he was awakened by a commotion in the yard. Wang Jizi, leave the money for the ointment and get out of here quickly. Sanyang, give me a chance. Damn it, if you dare to move again, I'll smash your head with a hammer. How much does the medicine cost? Said a man with resentment. 21. After hearing the sound of copper coins, the man persisted and said, I'll come see a doctor again next time. Get out of here. The courtyard door creaked as it closed, and Pei Sanyang resentfully said, if you want to take advantage of me, dream it. Li Yi flipped over and sat up, casually draped on a piece of clothing, opened the door, and walked into the courtyard. It's early spring now, coinciding with the late spring cold. The yard is covered with a thin layer of white frost, and Pei Sanyang is sitting in the corner, pounding medicine with a medicine hammer in a stone bowl. Mother. The mother screamed reluctantly, and he spoke out in difficulty, looking for talent. I want to ask you something. Pei Sanyang didn't look up and said, what do you want to ask? Li Yi hesitated a bit and boldly asked which year it was, which would scare people. I don't know what's going on, I've forgotten a lot of things. I know, your brain has been damaged by someone, and you don't even know your own mother, said Pei Sanyang in a difficult tone. What year is this year? Li Yi mustered up the courage and asked. What are you saying? Pei Sanyang looked up at him in surprise. Li Yi scratched his head and said, I mean, what is the emperor's name and era? What do you call the emperor? He's not your father. This year is the 8th year of Tianbao. Ah. 8 years of Tianbao. This is the reign title of Emperor Xuanzong of Tang. Surprisingly, he arrived in the Middle Tang dynasty. This is the prosperous era of the Tang dynasty. This seems to be the era of Li Bai's life. Li Yi admired the poet Li Bai the most during his high school years. I am born with a talent that will surely be useful. Even if 1,000 pieces of gold are scattered, they will come back again. Those who abandon me cannot leave yesterday's day, those who disturb my heart are troubled today. He is so familiar with these timeless masterpieces that now he can see his idol with his own eyes, which makes him feel a little excited. Who else is there? Yang Guifei, Li Longji, and Lushan Li Yi suddenly realized that in the 8th year of Tianbao, there were only 6 years left until the Lushan rebellion. Isn't that a chaotic era is about to come? But what's the relationship between chaotic times and himself? Li Yi looked at the 3 rundown cottages. Can chaotic times make his situation even worse? Maybe in a chaotic world, it's still my own chance. Various thoughts and emotions surged in Li Ye's heart, causing worry, unease, restlessness, and even a faint expectation. Don't be in a daze, come and help your mother make medicine. The plaster at home is almost broken, hurry up. Li Yi took the medicine mallet and sat on a small stool pounding medicine, still daydreaming about this era and the impending chaos in his mind. Suddenly, he felt a warmth in his arms, lowered his head, and there was actually a hot egg in his arms. "Hurry up and eat while it's hot." Pei Sanyang turned around and left. Looking at the slender back of the Tang dynasty mother, Li Yi felt a hint of guilt in his heart. Although this was not his own era, after all, there were still people who loved and cared for him. Isn't his attitude towards her a bit excessive? She. It seems that someone is giving a secret signal. Li Yi looked around and saw a chubby round face on the wall of the courtyard, also looking 13 or 14 years old. With a worried expression on his face, he asked, "Old Li, are you feeling better?" Li Yi still had some memories of the Tang dynasty in his mind, but it was very vague. He only felt that this chubby guy looked familiar, but he forgot who he was. Li Yi nodded. At this moment, Pei Sanyang strode out of the room and angrily rebuked with her hips crossed, "Fatty guy, I almost got killed. Are you still alive?" Xiaopeng stuck out his tongue and turned around before running. "Mother, who is he?" Pei Sanyang glared at her son and said, "They are just like you, troublemakers. It's best to forget about them." Pei Sanyang turned around and went into the house. Li Yi walked quickly to the low wall and looked outside. He saw the chubby man hiding behind an old locust tree, with a big round face, small eyes, and a small nose. He was only 13 or 14 years old, but he was almost 1.8 meters tall and fat. "Old time, old place." The fat man turned around and ran away. Li Yi burst into a bitter smile. When is the old time? Where is the old place again? Pei Sanyang was very busy. She packed up the ointment and went out to see someone. As usual, she carried her basket and her hammer. Looking for an opportunity, Li Yi asked Aunt Mu, "Aunt, today a fat man came to me. He's about the same age as me." "Who is he?" Mrs. Mu is the dowry maid of Pei Sanyang's mother, who has been taking care of Pei Sanyang for over 30 years. She is not a mother and daughter, but has feelings for them. Li Yi was also raised by her, treating him like his own grandson. Mrs. Mu smiled and said, "It seems that you have been beaten hard. You don't even know Zhang Xiaopeng who grew up together anymore. There are more than 10 of them, all of whom are your little brothers." "What does little brother mean?" "You are their big brother." A word flashed through Li Ye's mind, the boss of the underworld. "Do you still have a group of little brothers under your command?" He felt even more surprised in his heart and quickly asked, "Auntie, who hurt me?" "I can't say this, your mother doesn't allow me to say it." "When and where did he ask me to meet at all times and places?" "Don't ask me, I don't know anything." Mrs. Mu shook her head like a tambourine. "Who is my dad?" "Auntie should know." Aunt Mu's eyes darkened and sighed, "I'll cook noodles in soup for you." She stood up and walked out to the door. She turned back and smiled mysteriously, "You used to sneak up at midnight and run to the temple. I don't know why you're going." End of this chapter. Chapter 2. The True Nature of Rangers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. The True Nature of Rangers. Bang. Bang bang. Be careful of the candle fire, close the door to prevent theft. Bang. Bang bang. The watchman walked away, and Li Yi got up. He dared not walk through the main door, but jumped out of the window and climbed over the courtyard wall before leaving. The mother of the Tang dynasty and Aunt Mu refused to say anything, and he could only seek the truth from his friends. Shi Temple is the Chenghuang Temple, not far from Li Ye's home. Standing in the yard, you can see cornices and crouching animals. As soon as he entered the temple gate, he suddenly heard the sound of running behind him. Before he could turn around, he felt the sound of wind behind him. He instinctively flashed away, incredibly fast, and the people behind him pounced in the air. The person who pounced on him saw the chubby little man during the day. He saw Li Yi in a daze and scratched his head, saying, "Old Li, what are you doing in the temple?" Li Yi was still in shock. He had just flashed and unexpectedly moved about 1.5 meters horizontally. How did he do it? And the speed of the flash was so fast that the opponent was only half a meter away from him and didn't hit. He vaguely realized that he might be skilled in martial arts. Li Yi regained his senses and suddenly furrowed his brows. "It's not right. Didn't you schedule me to meet here tonight? Isn't this the old place?" The chubby boy shook his head and said, "No. Our old place is a polo field, not here. So why are you here too? We've been waiting for you at the polo field for a long time, but we can't wait for you anymore. I'll go to your house and find you climbing over a wall and sneaking towards the direction of the temple. I'll be right behind you." Li Yi was even more confused. He couldn't keep up with the old times and places. Did Aunt Mu make a mistake? At this moment, two more teenagers came running, one tall and one short, both quite thin. "Old Fat, have you found him yet?" "Here it is." The chubby little man walked up and whispered to the two people, "Maybe it's what Aunt Pei said. His brain has been damaged." The two of them said with a bitter face, "What should we do? We're doomed now." Although their voices were low, Li Yi could hear them clearly. He waved his hand and said, "I'm fine, I just can't remember some things. I only remember Lao Pang. I forgot your names, you two." The skinny boy ran up and grabbed Li Ye's arm, saying, "Old Li, I'm Xiao Wangmio, he's Wu Jilang. They were all names you gave me. Do you remember?" Under the moonlight, Li Yi saw a tuft of yellow hair on the little boy's head, while the other was tall and black, with legs as thin as chicken legs. He poop. Laugh out loud, these two nicknames are really appropriate. Let's go to the God of Wealth Temple. The chubby boy led the way in front, and the God of Wealth Temple was located on the side of the side hall. Four people flipped through the window and entered the side hall, where a clay sculpture was enshrined with the words, "Wealth and Silk Star Lord," beside it. This Wealth Star Lord is the God of wealth in the eyes of the people of the Tang dynasty. They found a few old caddies under the altar and sat cross-legged on them. Li Yi remembered his aunt saying that he had a dozen or so younger brothers, but there were only 3 in front of him. "Why are only the 3 of you left? They're all scattered." The chubby little man sighed and said, "Since you were injured, we've been cowardly and dare not go to the polo field again, but those guys won't let us go. They hit us once and made us run around like dogs." Xiaoqiling's arm was broken by them, and the whole family moved away. "We expect you to recover soon." Li Yi was confused and chuckled, "I can't remember many things. I don't even know my mother anymore. Can you tell me who they are? Why are they fighting?" The 3 of them all knew that he had forgotten something, and they were eager to talk. It was only then that Li Yi gradually understood. He lives in this neighborhood called Yonghafang, which is a famous impoverished area in Chang'an. The children don't have money to study and gather together all day to play around. They fight the most fiercely, have amazing strength, and are loyal and don't bully the weak. Naturally, they become the big brother of the children. There is a polo field to the west of Yonghe Square. During the day, the army needs to practice playing. In the afternoon, when they return to the camp, the polo field becomes a paradise for children. However, children from nearby neighborhoods also come to play, and fighting and grabbing territory has become a common occurrence. But starting from last autumn, a group of wealthy children came and occupied the polo field, practicing playing polo every evening. Li Yi and his team refused to let go, and both sides had fought several times, but the conflict grew deeper. Just half a month ago, in a conflict, Li Yi was severely unconscious by a martial artist brought by a wealthy family, and almost lost his life. Li Yi couldn't help but laugh. He thought that his injury was something big, but it turned out he was fighting with a group of teenagers. "Old Li, as soon as you dodged just now, I knew you had recovered. Tomorrow, let's take the guys and fight them. The little chubby man showed a fierce expression, his face full of flesh. Work with them, kill these dog bastards. Xiao Huangmao and Wu Jilong clenched their fists and said. Li Yi didn't know if his predecessor would be passionate and agree, but now he doesn't. Li Ye's current physical age is only 14 years old, but his psychological age is already 20.3 years old, long past the age of impulsive thinking and causing trouble. During the Tang dynasty, his mother always referred to him as a wandering hero. At first, he was complacent and thought he was a wandering hero. It was only after Mrs. Mu explained that he realized that "you" in "wandering heroes" meant to be idle, and "xia" did not refer to chivalry helping others, but to causing trouble. In short, a ranger is a lazy and troublemaker. Yeah. I'm already 14 years old, and I still fight with other children all day to grab territory. Isn't that a little thug? It's not interesting to fight back and forth. It's better to find something to do and earn some money to spend money. The three of them looked at each other and Zhang Xiaopeng said urgently, "Old Li, big brother, do you also agree?" Li Yi shook his head and said, "I just feel like fighting all day is boring. I want to find something to do, or go shopping at a bookstore. Is there a bookstore near us?" Strolling through bookstores. The three of them listened in disbelief and shook their heads together. There are no bookstores in the neighborhood. A strong drowsiness struck, and Li Yi yawned. It's too late. Let's go back to bed first. We'll talk tomorrow, you can come directly to me. He stood up and took a few steps, and Zhang Xiaopeng suddenly cursed fiercely, "You useless eunuch without eggs. You're not even as good as a dog. We're really blind." Li Yi was furious and his drowsiness disappeared without a trace. He turned around and grabbed Zhang Xiaopeng by the neck, dragging him over. "What do I owe you? Are you insulting me like this?" Zhang Xiaopeng glared at him angrily and said, "You were almost killed by their despicable means, and you were able to swallow your anger. Of course, you are a eunuch without eggs. What does it mean, what despicable means?" Li Yi said coldly, "Tell me exactly what happened at that time. You let go of me first." Li Yi loosened his collar, only to find that he had dragged this fat man, who weighed at least 150 pounds, more than 10 steps away. Zhang Xiaopeng seemed to have gotten used to being dragged by him. He tidied up his clothes and said, "If they can't beat you, they'll bet and fight with you. Each person will hit the other person 3 times with a stick, and if they can't stand steadily, they'll admit defeat. You and they even signed a winning or losing agreement, and both sides will admit defeat. And then what? Then they asked you to fight first. They brought out a warrior, and you hit him on the back 3 times with a wooden stick. The warrior couldn't stand steadily and took 2 steps, then it was their turn." Zhang Xiaopeng gritted his teeth and said, "They secretly switched to iron bars. Iron rod." Li Ye's eyes suddenly narrowed into a slit. Li Yi returned home with a heavy heart. As soon as he climbed into the courtyard wall, he found his mother Pei Sanyang standing in the yard with a whistle stick, watching him coldly. "I want to restore my memory, Xiaopeng told me many things." Pei Sanyang's gaze softened and she set the whistle aside. She stepped forward and caressed her son's head, saying, "The thing I regret the most is that I didn't insist on letting you read. Have I read a book?" Li Yi exclaimed in surprise, "When you were 7 years old, you read for a year. Mu Niang advised me to continue letting you read, but I felt that reading would only make people worse, and that practicing martial arts was the most useful. You wouldn't be bullied in the future, but now I regret it so much." "Why?" Pei Sanyang's eyes lit up with anger. "If you had read a book, you wouldn't have been foolish enough to sign that bullshit confession, making it impossible for me to win a lawsuit." Li Yi looked at his mother in front of him with an inexplicable sourness in his eyes. After a while, he lowered his head and said, "I won't be foolish anymore." End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Fusion and Transcendence. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Fusion and Transcendence. Although Li Yi didn't want to cause trouble again, when Zhang Xiaopang told him the truth, a nail pierced into his heart. If it's just a fight and injury, it's okay after the injury is healed. Unfortunately, the other party used despicable means to frame him, and Li Yi couldn't swallow this breath. But Pei Sanyang never allowed him to provoke those wealthy children again. They were too despicable and cunning, and their son was not their match. They would eventually kill him. Pei Sanyang goes to the clinic every morning and rushes back in the afternoon to prepare ointment. At the same time, she also looks at her son, but Li Yi has no chance at all. If there is no opportunity, we can only wait for it. On the other hand, Li Yi was also curious about his predecessor. Since he realized that his actions were unusual, he has been constantly exploring his potential. That morning, Aunt Mu was sewing clothes for him while chattering about his childhood memories. Li Yi sat on the side with his chin resting, listening attentively. Since you were half a year old, your mother has been bathing you with herbs. I said the child is too young to withstand the medicine of tigers and wolves, so she won't listen. You didn't die from her torment, it's your destiny. Li Yi smiled and said, what are the benefits of herbal baths? Your mother's words are magical. She said it's her family's secret recipe, which can wash marrow and promote tendons. I don't think it's as exaggerated as she said. At most, she's not afraid of heat in summer and cold in winter. Her body is strong and not easy to get sick. That's all I've seen. No wonder I don't feel cold even if I only wear a thin single garment. Which company's secret recipe is this? Li Yi wanted to ask about the background of his mother in the Tang dynasty, but in the end, he held back. He found that whenever he asked about his father or mother in the Tang dynasty, Aunt Mu would find an excuse to leave. Li Yi could only continue the previous topic, what other martial arts did I practice? You've practiced too much, it's complicated, and you always give up soon after you can't hold on. I'm not saying your mother doesn't have patience, but there's a practice that you've been practicing since you were 4 years old until now. What is it? When you were 2 years old, your mother taught you to set a circle. Put a few puppets on the ground. When you stand a few feet away and throw a bamboo circle, your mother will reward you with a small dim sum. Li Yi is speechless. Is this training a dog? Or are you planning to set up a street stall when you grow up? Mrs. Mu smiled and continued, when you were 4 years old, your mother took you to see how to play polo. Suddenly, you had a strong interest in playing polo. You pinched a mud ball yourself, hit it with a wooden stick, and after playing for a few days, you were able to hit it into a small hole on the 1-foot wall with one rod. Your mother said you had talent, so she started training you to play. After training you for 3 months, she lost patience, but you persisted. I've been persisting until now. Li Yi was surprised. How did he manage to persist in practicing polo for 10 years? Mrs. Mu put down her clothes and smiled mysteriously, I'll show you something. She bent down and pulled out a tattered wooden box from under the bed, covered in dust. Aunt Mu blew some dust and smiled, I collected all of this for you. What is it? Li Ye's curiosity was aroused. Mrs. Mu opened the box and found that there were over 20 long and short wooden sticks inside, many of which were broken. This is the wooden stick you used to play mud ball for the first time. Mrs. Mu picked up a short wooden stick and smiled, at that time, you were only a little big, so you were playing ball in the yard with this small stick. Is everything? All of them are what you have used, not a few. Auntie has collected them for you. Looking at a box of more than 20 wooden sticks, Li Ye's eyes moistened. It was clear that these were not wooden sticks, but rather the kindness of an old man towards him. The mathematics, physics, chemistry, Chinese language, history, and geography of his past life are not yet useful to him. Even memorizing a few Tang and Song poems cannot cause a sensation in Chang'an. A poor child who grew up in a slum and only read for a year can write shocking literary works. Who would believe it? On the contrary, recklessly showing oneself will only put him in a dangerous situation and become the prey of the powerful. Pragmatism is the key to survival. He needs to integrate into the Tang dynasty and adapt to this era, rather than adapting to it. For several days in a row, Li Yi was practicing various exercises to understand himself. He found that his martial arts skills were actually very ordinary. He may have only practiced a few moves of three-legged cat kung fu, but he had exceptionally strong talents, mainly in strength, speed, and sharpness. He can easily lift nearly 200 pounds of heavy objects, which even strong adults may not be able to do. It is precisely because his strength far exceeds that of his peers, coupled with his rough and sturdy skin, he is particularly capable of being beaten, that he can become the king of fighting among the young people in the neighborhood. In addition, he has an extremely sharp reaction and a fast speed, which he discovered in the toilet. He can even use his index finger and thumb to quickly grasp the flies passing by in front of him, hitting all kinds of targets, although it is a bit disgusting. Of course, this is absolutely related to his 10 years of hard training in playing polo, and also to his unexpected effects from taking small potions. That night, Li Yi lit a stick of incense on the wall of the courtyard. He stood on the opposite side of the courtyard, about 2 zhang apart, holding a horse polo stick in his hand. The Tang dynasty polo stick looked like a hockey stick from later generations. But on the ground, it was not polo, but a stone ball the size of a sparrow egg. Li Ye's heart was calm like water, and his mind was empty. He swung his club and hit it, pa. The club hit Shimaru on the ground with precision, and Shimaru flew out like lightning. The burning incense on the wall suddenly disappeared. Amazing. He couldn't help but praise himself in his heart. Li Yi took another stone ball, and this time he changed his target. He swung his pole to hit the trunk of a small tree next to him, but the stone ball passed by the trunk, a difference of 30 centimeters. Li Yi was stunned. He could hit the incense burner, but he couldn't hit the trunk that was dozens of times larger than it. Why? Li Yi closed his eyes and reminisced about his experience when he hit the incense head fire. He remembered the moment when he hit the incense head fire, and he seemed to have a very subtle feeling that he could control his strength and accuracy. But when hitting the trunk, this sense of control disappears. He found some more stones and conducted the experiment again. He hit Xiantou 10 times in a row, and 3 times he found that feeling. He hit Xiantou, and the other 7 times he missed. He knew he couldn't be in a hurry and needed time to slowly control it. 10 days passed in a flash, and Li Yi practiced hard every day, practicing hundreds of times a day. As time passed, the feeling of control and accuracy became more and more apparent, and the number of times he controlled it also increased. Even without practice, he could find that feeling. He knew that he was about to succeed. Old chubby, throw it higher. Zhang Xiaopang threw 2 pieces of dry mud into the air, one in front and the other behind. Li Yi swung his pole and hit the stones. This time, the feeling was that he had actually come out on his own, and he didn't need to deliberately search for it. That was such a delicate control, he completely controlled the force and direction of the swing, and the small stones flew out like lightning, pa. Pop crushed 2 pieces of dry mud in the air. You've been practicing for almost 2 hours now and can hit every shot, isn't that enough? Zhang Xiaopang was really exhausted and sat on the ground motionless. Li Yi did not answer. He stood there like a stone carving, savoring the wonderful feeling of the moment when he made his hand with his heart. Li Ye's predecessor had worked hard for 10 years, and now he has finally integrated it. He has mastered that kind of control. A sparrow landed on a big tree, suddenly flapping its wings and flying over Li Ye's head. Li Yi weighed the stone ball in his hand and suddenly threw it into the sky. The passing sparrow let out a mournful cry and suddenly fell. That's right. It's this kind of alignment and force control, whether it's playing polo, using a slingshot, or throwing stones with bare hands, he can find this feeling. Zhang Xiaopang was so surprised that he jumped up and said, "Wow! You still have the ability to hit objects with flying stones. When did you learn it? Li Yi was taken aback and said, have I never hit before? Where is that? You boast about playing polo, but if we show you a hand, you won't even hit the bird, let alone the bird. Zhang Xiaopeng's words made Li Yi suddenly realize that it was highly likely that his predecessor had not been able to grasp this precise control, but rather relied on an instinct. If that's the case, then his predecessor should have hit the incense burner on time. That is to say, I not only integrated the 10 years of hard training from my predecessor, but also surpassed him. In the next few days, Li Yi continued to consolidate this exquisite control, completely controlling it and using it as he pleased. The income from opening a medical clinic in a poor area is very meager, and the poor can afford to pay 10 or 21 for a single illness. However, the medicinal materials in Chang'an are very expensive. If they were to buy medicinal materials to make ointments, Pei Sanyang's clinic would have closed long ago. In order to make a living, Pei Sanyang had to go outside the city to collect herbs on her own, saving on the cost of herbs. Previously, it was her son who accompanied her, but in order to help her son recover better, this time she decided to go and collect herbs herself. It will take 2 days to go, and Li Ye's opportunity has finally arrived. In the evening, Li Yi arrived at the polo field with 3 younger brothers, Zhang Xiaopeng, Xiao Huangmao, and Wu Jilang. Zhang Xiaopeng was also preparing to take an iron rod, but Li Yi stopped him. The other party dared to use the iron rod because they had signed a bet agreement beforehand. If it weren't for this agreement, if we were to fight with an iron rod, the lawsuit wouldn't have been able to escape. Moreover, Li Yi had no intention of fighting the other party at all. He wanted to find a place, but he didn't necessarily have to resort to violence. The polo field is slightly smaller than later football fields, with a wooden board on each side and a volleyball-sized hole dug into it. While riding a horse, the polo player hits the ball into the opponent's hole, earning 1 point. A horse racing team consists of 5 people. On the polo field, 5 wealthy children are riding horses and practicing playing polo, with several of their servants around. The leader is a tall and thin young man, about 16 or 17 years old. His name is Ma Jinsong and his family is located across from Daisien Fang. In fact, all 5 of them are wealthy children of Daisien Fang. The children of wealthy families may not necessarily be the children of powerful individuals. They may be big businessmen, wealthy families, shopkeepers, or big stewards who rely on powerful individuals. At this moment, Ma Jinsong suddenly restrained his horse and looked in surprise at the several enemies who had walked onto the court. This bastard is actually okay, isn't it that he's paralyzed? End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Oral Administration. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Oral administration. Several wealthy children rushed forward one after another, and Ma Jinsong shouted loudly, Li Yi, you have already accepted the bet and lost. What else do you want? Li Yi lightly patted the wooden stick in his hand and said coldly, I accepted the bet, but I didn't admit defeat. Each of you asked me to strike a few sticks with an iron rod, and this matter will be settled. Several wealthy children were afraid of being beaten by Li Yi, so they used despicable means to plot against him. Today, they didn't bring any martial artists, and the other party came for revenge. If they fight, they will suffer a great loss. Let's go. Ma Jinsong turned his horse's head and left, while the other few followed suit. Li Yi remained calm and said, or in a different way, would you bet or not? Ma Jinsong restrained the horse and turned to ask, how do you want to bet? Let's bet on polo. Zhang Xiaopeng suddenly covered his mouth, how foolish he was. Unexpectedly, the boss has been practicing his swing hard during this period, and it turns out that he is going to compete in polo. Ma Jinsong looked at the 4 of them and said arrogantly, if you don't have a horse, you can't ride a donkey and compete with us. The others burst into laughter, and the thinnest wealthy young man said, and you're missing one more person. Li Yi said indifferently, do we dare to join the literary competition? There are two ways to compete in polo. One is a martial arts competition where two horse teams compete on the field, and the other is a cultural competition where skills are compared and there are many tricks involved, such as passing, dribbling, shooting holes, and so on, without the need for horseback riding. The opponent wants to compete with polo, but Ma Jinsong is not afraid. He proudly said, compare and draw a line. Li Yi pointed to the distant hole and said, shoot 30 steps out of the hole. If you have fewer strokes, you will win. Each side will play one person. We don't have horses, we can only shoot on foot. What if we win? What if we lose? Everyone is getting nervous, that's what they care most about. Li Yi said indifferently, if we win, you will compensate me 20 guan of medical expenses. In the future, when we are on the court, you cannot come. Pei Sanyang filed a lawsuit to demand 20 guan of medical money from the other party, but she lost the lawsuit and did not receive a penny. She even posted 2 guan of complaint money. What if you lose? Ma Jinsong asked coldly. If we lose, we won't take any further steps on this stadium, and the grudge of the iron rod will be wiped out. Ma Jinsong turned around to look at the crowd, and several wealthy children shouted together, bet with him. Okay. Ma Jinsong readily agreed and proudly said, I bet you. Xiao Huangmao and others looked at Li Yi with complex eyes. They had been fighting since childhood, and Li Yi was known as the king of fighting. However, today's scene really made it difficult for them to adapt. They didn't fight anymore, but instead competed in polo. What is this? Perhaps Lao Li's injury hasn't healed yet, so. Wu Jilang cleverly guessed. It's possible. Xiao Huangmao regretted and said, if we had known earlier, we shouldn't have encouraged him to come. It's okay, Lao Li is also very good at playing football and will never lose to him. Zhang Xiaopang is well aware that this ladybeard is more skilled at playing polo than fighting. The position is already set on the court, and there are 3 types of shooting matches. The 10-step line, the 30-step line, and the 50-step line. At the 50-step line, you usually need to ride a horse to sprint and play, otherwise your strength is not enough. I'll come first. Ma Jinsong stepped forward and proudly said, I'm not your opponent in the fight, but playing polo is a disgrace to yourself. Li Yi said calmly, don't blame me if you lose. Bad debt. Ma Jinsong sneered and pointed to the sidelines, saying, I have 30 guan of money there. If you win, I'll give you all of it. Li Yi smiled but didn't speak. Ma Jinsong walked up to the polo, took a deep breath, and then looked at the hole on the wooden board. With a sudden swing, the polo flew in an arc, pa. A sound hit the wooden board, almost penetrating the hole. Damn it, your luck is really unlucky. Ma Jinsong cursed softly and made way for his position. There are more than 10 polo balls on the ground, and Li Yi arranged them in a row at the 30-step line. The clubs he used were his own and very old. Pei Sanyang spent 10 yuan to buy them from a small stall. Li Yi stepped forward, calming his heart and making his mind clear. He hit the pole fiercely without any hesitation, and, bang, the polo shot out straight and accurately into the hole. Zhang Xiaopang and the others cheered and hugged, jumping and jumping, we won. Ma Jinsong's face suddenly darkened, this bastard's luck. Li Yi glanced sideways, snorted coldly, and swung his club continuously towards the polo on the ground. The polo flew away one after another, with 13 balls each accurately hitting the hole. On and off the field, there was an instant silence, with everyone opening their mouths wide and stunned. Li Yi said indifferently, if you still don't admit defeat, bring 50 more polo balls and I'll give up if you fly one. Ma Jinsong clasped his fists and bowed, I lost, I am convinced. He quickly walked off the stage, carrying 3 bags of money with his companions, and placed them in front of Li Yi. This is 30 guan of money. From now on, we won't come back. Li Yi smiled slightly and said, no delivery. Ma Jinsong waved his hand and said, let's go. Several wealthy children led their horses away, and the thinnest of them gave Li Yi a deep glance and followed suit. As the wealthy children walked away, 3 companions ran forward and surrounded Li Yi, looking envious and saying, Big brother, you're amazing at polo. We also want to learn, teach us. You don't want to fight anymore. Li Yi smiled slightly. Zhang Xiaopeng scratched his head and said awkwardly, now think about it, actually fighting is really boring. If you punch someone 10 times, you'll also get 8 punches yourself, making your face blue and swollen. If you go home, you'll have to get beaten by an old lady. How could you enjoy playing basketball? Seeing them lose with a disheveled face makes you feel happy. More importantly, you can still make money. The last sentence is the key point. Li Yi picked up 3 money bags and said, it's quite heavy, almost 200 pounds. He asked again, who knows about Xia Qiling's new home? Wu Zhilang raised his hand and said, he's my cousin, I know his family. Li Yi distributed a bag of money and said to him, Xiao Qilang's arm was broken by these bastards. Could you please send him these 10 guan coins? Wu Zhilang was moved in his heart and nodded repeatedly, I'll go later. His new home is in the neighboring neighborhood. Li Yi then allocated another bag of money and said, you have 3 points of this 10 guan money, and you have also been beaten. It's considered a shocking compensation. The 3 of them immediately jumped up with joy, and Zhang Xiaopeng gave a thumbs up and praised, Big brother still knows how to be a good person, and he didn't forget to give his little brothers a drink of soup even when eating meat. May I ask if it's convenient for Mr. Li? Someone suddenly spoke behind them. Li Yi turned around and saw a man standing not far away, in his 30s, dressed like a servant. Li Yi remembered that while several wealthy children were playing polo, there were several servants sitting below, as if this person was also one of them. Li Yi raised his eyebrows and asked, what do you need me for? My son Xiao has something to ask for Li's help with. Can we talk about it? Li Yi turned around and asked his friend, who is Mr. Xiao? Xiao Bin. Zhang Xiaopeng blurted out, it's the thinnest and wealthiest young master in the world. He's not bad at all. Last time, they wanted to hit Big Brother again, but he stopped them. Li Yi nodded and said, where is he? Right ahead, please move on, young Master Li. Li Yi shook his head and said, he begged me, not me. I understand, please wait a moment, young master. The servant ran away and not long after, the thin and wealthy young master rode a horse and ran over. He got off the horse and said, I was impolite. Please don't blame me, young Master Li. Li Yi said indifferently, it's getting dark soon. If you have anything, just tell me quickly. It's like this, I want to ask Mr. Li to play a polo game for me, and the reward is 50 guan. Zhang Xiaopeng and the others suddenly exclaimed, 50 guan, that's 50,000 won, which is unimaginable wealth in the eyes of children in the slums. Li Yi smiled and said, is this the new method you just discussed to deal with me? No. No. The thin and wealthy young master hurriedly waved his hand and said, it's my family's business, and it has nothing to do with them. I can swear that I will never dare to deceive the young master. Li Yi is not a 3-year-old child. In this era, the purchasing power of 50,000 won is equivalent to 50,000 yuan in later generations. He is a stranger, and he just gave you 50,000 yuan when he opened his mouth. How could such a thing happen in the world? But what about it? Being a person should not be rejected at once, leaving no room for others or oneself, which can easily offend others. Li Yi smiled and said, I'll consider it. My mother may not agree. The thin and wealthy young master took out a piece of paper and handed it to Li Yi, this is my address. If you're willing, come find me. My name is Xiao Bin. Thank you very much, my name is Li Yi. The thin and wealthy young master gave a bitter smile and said, of course I know, I'm afraid of being beaten by you. Li Yi laughed heartily and said, "If we don't fight, we won't know each other." Xiao Bin clasped his fists and saluted, "It's not early, I'll say goodbye first." He got on his horse and rode away. Zhang Xiaopeng couldn't resist roast, "Are you Lao Li after all? It's like being possessed by another person." Begging for tips and recommended tickets from everyone. Begging for monthly tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Responsibility in the face of danger. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Responsibility in the face of danger. Li Yi was in a happy mood and walked into the house carrying a bag of money. He met his neighbor, Mrs. Gu. Aunt Gu patted her thigh and anxiously said, "Oh my! You've finally come back. Go and take a look. Your mother has had an accident." Li Yi was startled and said, "What happened to my mother?" "She went to pick herbs, but was bitten by a venomous snake. She persisted in coming back and fainted as soon as she entered the door." Li Yi was extremely anxious and quickly ran towards his mother Pei Sanyang's house. In the room, Pei Sanyang lay unconscious on the bed, while a doctor was packing the medicine box. Aunt Mu sat aside and secretly wiped tears. "Auntie, how is my mother doing?" Li Yi rushed forward and couldn't help but take a deep breath of air. She saw her mother Pei Sanyang covering herself with a blanket, her right calf exposed outside, and it was pitch black and swollen. Mrs. Mu choked up and said, "I don't know how she's doing either. Dr. Lu drugged her and said she can only slightly delay the toxicity. He has no way to do it." Dr. Lu said beside him, "I advise you not to delay your time. Follow the method I suggested, maybe there is still a glimmer of hope." "What method?" Li Yi urgently asked. "You ask Auntie. I can only give your mother a slight delay. If the swelling doesn't subside by midnight, she will be in danger." The doctor shook his head and left. "Auntie, tell me quickly, what can I do?" Li Yi was a bit anxious. Dr. Lu said that there is a famous doctor in Yenkong Fang, named Wang Jishan. He used to be an imperial physician and had a unique prescription for dealing with poisonous insects, but it was too expensive. Let's take a look at 30 guan once. Ah! Li Yi felt regretful in his heart. He originally had 30 guan of money, but he knew he would not give it to them temporarily. Now it's not good to ask for it again. "Auntie, I have 10 guan xian here. Can we raise another 20 guan xian at home?" Mrs. Mu looked at him in surprise and said, "Where did you get the 10 guan coins?" "Auntie, don't worry about it. I'll explain it to you later. It's important to save people now." Mrs. Mu wiped her tears and said, "There's not even 20 guan of money at home. There's not even 2 guan left. You've been sick for so long, and your mother spends money every day to buy chicken, duck, and mutton to supplement your health. Every little bit of her savings have been used up." Li Yi took 2 steps back, feeling a strong sense of guilt that made him speechless. Looking at his unconscious mother, he gritted his teeth and insisted on saving her no matter what. He suddenly thought of something and reached out to touch the note in his arms. Qiao's mansion was right across from the waiting Xian Fang. Li Yi ran all the way and soon ran into the waiting Xian Fang, when it was already dark. Daxianfang belongs to the residential area of middle-class people, and the houses are much more tidy and atmospheric. Qiao's mansion is located near the gate, which is easy to find. As soon as I entered the gate, I found out about a 3-acre mansion. Li Yi rushed to the door of Qiao's mansion and coincidentally saw the servant who was following Qiao Bin. "Brother, do you still know me?" "Ah. It's Mr. Li, are you looking for my young master?" "Yes. Yes. I have an urgent matter to contact him, please report it to me." "Please wait a moment, I will report it to you now." The servant also knew that his master had a request from the other party, so he didn't dare to delay and immediately ran to the backyard. Not long after, Qiao Bin walked out with a smile and said, "Brotherly, we met again so soon. Li Ye's heart was burning with anxiety, and he didn't chat. He opened the door and said to the mountain, I promise to play for you, but there is one condition. Please say, what conditions? I hope you can advance me 20 guan. This. Xiaobin felt a bit embarrassed. I have to ask my dad, are you in a hurry to use the money? Li Yi nodded and said, my mother has been bitten by a venomous snake, she is in danger. I understand now. You're looking for Dr. Wang from Jishan Hall, right? He has detoxified my father and it really works. That's right. I'm just looking for him, but I heard he wants 30 guan. I don't have enough money, I still need 20 guan, so I can only advance from you. Xiaobin thought for a moment and said, our family's rule is not to prepay, but I can lend you the money I saved myself. You can pay me back after you finish playing. Li Yi was moved in his heart and quickly bowed, thank you, Mr. Qiao. You wait, I'll be right here. Xiaobin ran back to the mansion. Before long, he led 2 horses and a cloth bag, saying, this is 30 taels of silver. Time is tight, I'll take you to Jishan Hall. It's hard to find his house. Li Yi also knew that 1 or 2 silver coins were equivalent to regular money. He quickly waved his hand and said, 30 taels or 20 taels is enough. Xiaobin smiled slightly and said, what about your 10 guan coins? At my house, I'll go back and pick it up first. Xiaobin shook his head and said, then it's too late. The gate will be closed soon, otherwise what should I bring my horse out for? Li Yi was startled and said, when will the gate close? It's coming soon, hurry up and get on your horse. Xiaobin flipped over and mounted his horse. Li Yi hesitated for a moment and said, perhaps I don't know how to ride a horse. Big brother, why don't you know how to ride a horse? Last year, you chased me while riding a horse and almost killed me. Li Ye's face turned red and he said, maybe I haven't ridden a horse for a long time, I'm a bit rusty. It's okay. You got your right foot on the stirrup and got on the horse with just one kick. Li Yi learned from Xiaobin's previous posture of getting on the horse. He grabbed the reins with one hand, supported the horse's neck with the other, stepped on the stirrup with his right foot, and jumped onto the horse with all his might. He exerted too much force and almost fell head-on. Xiaobin chuckled and said, it's a bit rusty, it's okay. Let's run slower, we still have time. Li Yi followed him to urge the horse to run a little, and soon he adapted. He did indeed know how to ride a horse, and his balance was very good. He felt that he could even gallop on the horse. Yankang Fang is located in the northeast direction, separated from Daisian Fang by 2 blocks. It is the location of Chang'an County government and is also a famous gathering area for merchants due to its proximity to the West Market. Along the way into the neighborhood, you can see many buildings in the Western region style, all of which are the residences of merchants. They are decorated brilliantly and it is evident that they are all very wealthy, but the residences are not large, only 2 or 3 acres in size. The Tang dynasty had strict hierarchy, and although merchants had money, they could not afford to live in large residences. That's Jishan Hall. Xiaobin pointed to an inconspicuous small door in front of him, on which hung 2 lanterns with the words, Jishan, written on them. Li Yi let out a cry of luck. If it weren't for this young Master Qiao accompanying him, where could he have found it? The 2 of them dismounted and Li Yi came forward to knock on the door. After a moment, the door creaked open and a boy with a comb on his head appeared, about 10 years old. What's up with you? The boy was a bit unhappy. Li Yi quickly clenched his fists and said, my mother was bitten by a venomous snake and is in critical condition. She has come to seek medical attention. The boy shook his head and said, my master is feeling unwell and won't take the doctor. Come back another day. After speaking, the boy was about to close the door. Li Yi pressed against the door and begged in a low voice, life is at stake. Please help me, young man. The boy saw that Li Yi was dressed roughly, and a hint of contempt flashed in his eyes. There are so many critically ill people, how can we help them? Li Yi refused to let go and said, little brother, I have already prepared 30 guan of money. Can you help me? The boy couldn't close the door and suddenly said angrily, are you bothering me? The county government is right next door. If you don't let go, I'll have someone report to the government. Xiao Bin flashed out with a smile and said, my father is the steward of Prince Yining's mansion, Xiao. Dr. Wang came to my house to see my father's illness. Can you please accommodate him? End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Competition for Employment. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Competition for Employment. The boy heard that he was from the Prince Xining's mansion and said, wait, I'll go ask. He closed the door and Li Yi sighed, if it weren't for your help today, I really don't know what to do. It's okay. Didn't you say you don't know each other without fighting? Friend. It's just you helping me, I'll help you, right? Okay. Li Yi nodded, I've made you a friend. At this moment, the door opened again and the boy came out carrying 3 patches of ointment and 2 pairs of medicine. Bring me 30 guan of money. This is 30 taels of silver. Li Yi quickly handed over the silver packet. The boy looked at the condition of the silver under the lantern light, then took it and weighed it before handing the ointment and medicine package to Li Yi. I'll tell you how to use it. Bake the ointment on the lamp until soft, stick it on the area bitten by a venomous snake, and after an hour, change it to another one. Apply 3 times in a row, and the venomous blood will come out. Then, boil medicine to nourish the body and rest for 2 to 3 days. Thank you so much. At this moment, a drumming sound suddenly came from a distance, and Xiao Bin's face changed greatly. We're going to close the gate, hurry up. Li Yi put the medicine into his arms, flipped over and mounted his horse, but didn't pay attention to greeting the boy. He galloped his horse and the 2 of them ran towards the gate, one in front and the other behind, like the wind. Chang'an closed the city gate after dark, and the gate began to close at the hour of Su. After playing 108 drums, the gate closed, but it never opened and could only enter at dawn the next day. At this moment, Li Yi also spared no effort and ran wildly on his horse, rushing to the gate of the Dao Xian Fang. He dismounted and handed the horse to Xiao Bin. I'll come find you tomorrow. Hurry up. The drums are about to stop. Li Yi spread his legs and ran towards the gate of Yonghe Square across from him. At this moment, the drums had stopped and the gate was slowly closing. Big brother, wait for me. The 2 soldiers who closed the door saw Li Yi rushing towards them. They hesitated for a moment and slowed down the speed of closing the door a bit. At the moment the gate closed, Li Yi rushed into the last gap. Mrs. Mu was very skilled in using medicine. She carefully applied the ointment to Pei Sanyang's wound. At this point, Pei Sanyang's entire right calf was swollen and black air had spread to her thigh. The doctor was right, if the swelling didn't subside at night, it would really be dangerous. Li Yi sat nervously on the side, holding his mother's hand and silently praying. At this moment, he had already regarded Pei Sanyang as his own mother. Li Ye's parents divorced early in his past life, and his sister and mother returned to Sichuan. However, his father, who was an alcoholic, hit people after drinking, which made his childhood very unhappy. Fortunately, his grandmother took care of him. At the age of 10, his father was drunk and injured, and he was sent to prison. He and his grandmother went back to the countryside. At the age of 15, his grandmother passed away and he had to return to his father's house. His father had already been released from prison and remarried. Although his stepmother did not drive him away, she never concealed her hatred and disgust towards him. He often missed his mother and his deceased grandmother, but his mother had already remarried and could no longer take care of him. He had to hide this longing for his mother deep in his heart. At the age of 16, he moved into school and completely left that home full of cold violence. He now has another home, although poor, it is so warm. Pei Sanyang's care and love for him have not changed because he has crossed thousands of years, making him feel his mother's love again. There is also Aunt Mu, who has always believed that she is the grandmother's past life. After an unknown amount of time, he fell asleep on the side of Pei Sanyang's bed. Li Yi had a dream where he saw a phoenix hovering above his head. With a gentle push from the phoenix, he fell into the sea. Li Yi was suddenly awakened, only to find that his mother was gently stroking his hair. Li Yi was both surprised and delighted. "Mother, you've woken up. My silly son has finally grown up." Pei Sanyang's voice choked up, her eyes turned red, and tears streamed down. "Mom, let me take a look at your wound." Aunt Mu next to her smiled and said, "You don't need to look anymore. The black blood has run out, and the calf has already reduced swelling. That's why I used the second patch. This ointment really has a miraculous effect. Then let's stick the third sticker too." "Don't stick it anymore." Pei Sanyang struggled to sit up, but Li Yi quickly supported her. Pei Sanyang took the ointment from Aunt Mu and sniffed it with a smile, saying, "I need to study it carefully. Maybe I can get this prescription." She suddenly grabbed Li Ye's ear and said quickly and accurately, "Stinky kid, tell me, where did you get 30 guan of money?" Of course, Pei Sanyang wouldn't stop her son from playing basketball and would earn money based on her own abilities. Why not? But she also has the condition that the money she earns must be handed over to her. For example, the 10 guan money that Li Yi brought back yesterday cannot be found. The next morning, Li Yi arrived at Xiao's mansion as agreed, and Xiao Bin was already waiting for him at the door. Obviously, Xiao Bin is not as happy as he was yesterday, and he seems a bit preoccupied. "I found an opportunity and whispered to Li Yi, 'My dad may test you. Don't be humble, you must show your true abilities, otherwise I will suffer.' Why? There is competition." These 3 words explain why Xiao Bin has something on his mind. Li Yi is not the only applicant. After all, Xiao Bin is only a teenager, and his father does not believe his recommendation is normal. Li Yi nodded and said, "I will do my best." The Qiao mansion does not occupy a large area, about 3 acres, divided into 3 entrances. The front courtyard, the atrium, and the back house. The front courtyard consists of a kitchen, a stable, a warehouse, a servant room, and so on. At first glance, Li Yi saw many large water tanks placed by the wall, covered with bamboo hats. Li Ye's family also had 2 large tanks. Aunt Mu told him that each household had one, indicating the meaning of happiness. Of course, it was also a water tank. As the household grew larger, the more tanks there were, and it was estimated that there were 18 tanks here. Passing through a corridor, they arrived at the atrium, where there was a courtyard with blue bricks laid on the ground. Over time, the blue bricks had turned a bit black. On both sides of the courtyard were ear rooms, in the middle was the main hall, and on both sides of the guest hall were rooms, usually living rooms or canteens. At this moment, there were more than 10 people standing in the courtyard, and a sitting couch was placed on the central steps. A middle-aged man sat cross-legged on it, looking very similar to Xiao Bin, probably his father. Standing around were several servants, as well as several young men in white samurai uniforms, around 17 or 18 years old, each holding a polo club and full of energy. Before leaving, Aunt Mu specifically instructed Li Yi to have some basic etiquette, such as bowing instead of kneeling. Generally, scholars with achievements only need to kneel to heaven and earth, to the emperor, and to their parents, while ordinary people kneel more, that is, to kneel to officials. If they are slaves, servants, tenant farmers, etc., they also need to kneel to their masters. Xiao Bin's father is only a steward of the powerful mansion, nor is he the master of Li Yi. Of course, there is no need to kneel. Li Yi bowed and said, "Young Li Yi, have you met Uncle Xiao?" Xiao Bin's father is called Xiao Xinzhong. He has a long face, a thin face, and a pair of particularly lively eyes. Judging by his appearance, he is a shrewd person. He stroked his beard and smiled. Third, this is the shooter you introduced, isn't it too young? Xiaobin had already stood behind his father and whispered, every word the child says to his father is true. But I have also told you the rules set by the prince. Father. Okay. Just give it a try. The rule set by Prince Yining was to choose a polo player among the royal family members. Li Yi did not meet the requirements, but Xiao Xingzhong still wanted to give his son face and let Li Yi withdraw through fair competition. His son had nothing to say. Xiao Xingzhong waved to another young man in black, and the young man walked forward with great enthusiasm. He was about 17 or 18 years old, very sturdy, and knew from his walking steps that he was a martial arts practitioner. He arrogantly glanced at Li Ye's broken club, his eyes filled with ridicule and contempt. Xiao Xingzhong smiled and said, I have been ordered by the prince to form a horse racing team. Currently, there is still a shortage of one shooter. I need to choose one of you two, and of course, the one with high skills will be selected. It's fair, do you have any objections? Both of them nodded, and Xiao Xingzhong smiled and said, my yard is not big enough to shoot holes like real polo. We need some flexibility, so let's use a bottle game. I'll feed you the ball, and the one with more bottle breaks wins. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. The Possibility of Strange Goods. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. The possibility of strange goods. Everyone clearly understood the rules and was eager to try one by one. Li Yi also vaguely guessed that it must be the iron pill or the stone pill. At this moment, two servants brought a table and placed it 2 zhang away. The butler placed 3 porcelain bottles on the table. Just 2 zhang away. Xiao Xingzhong stood up and walked down the steps, holding several stone balls the size of a ping-pong ball. He smiled faintly at Li Yi and said, I throw stone balls, you strike stone balls, and the one who breaks porcelain bottles many times wins. Do you understand? Xiao Xingzhong glanced at the young man again and smiled, Wang Shun, you often fight. You go ahead. Let's give Li a demonstration. The young man took off his coat and revealed his robust upper body. He moved his muscles and bones, and the muscles on his arms were particularly full and strong. Ah Shun, show me your true abilities. Several polo players cheered on this young man. They were all royal servants who practiced martial arts together and were very familiar with each other. The young man picked up the polo club and made a good posture. Xiao Xingzhong suddenly threw a stone ball, much like playing baseball in later generations. The young man swung the club and the stone ball flew out, bang. A porcelain bottle was smashed to pieces. The crowd cheered loudly, good fight. Li Yi also nodded, playing well. He should have worked hard, but Xiao Bin was particularly nervous. This Wang Shun was recommended by the royal family early this morning and ranked 3rd in the hands of Prince Xining's servant Polo. With true skills, Xiao Bin was very worried that Li Yi could not suppress his aura. Come again. Xiao Xingzhong threw another stone ball and swung it out with a young swing, only listening to dang. With a sound, it hit the bottle, but it didn't break, it just shook. This is a thick ceramic bottle specifically used for practicing polo. Although its quality is poor, the bottle wall is very thick and must hit the front to shatter, making it easy to slip over the side when hit. Wang Shun, this cannot be counted as a score. I know, please take care of it before voting, Joe. The young man swallowed a mouthful of saliva and kept pinching the club, his body swaying lightly, making him a little nervous. Xiao Xingzhong once again threw the 3rd stone ball, and the young man swung it fiercely. The stone ball hit in a straight line, very powerful, but unfortunately, it almost brushed past the porcelain bottle. The young man's face was suddenly full of despair, unable to conceal the disappointment in his eyes. A few polo players cheered him up, 3-1, it's already pretty good, that kid can't hit a single one. Xiao Xingzhong sighed inwardly, feeling a bit disappointed. The shooter he was looking for was Qi Yong, who ranked first in the royal family and could hit 7 out of 10 in porcelain. Li Xiaoge, it's your turn. Li Yi nodded and walked forward with his semi-old golf club, squatting in a horse stance, his mind calm as water, and his mind empty. The butler placed 3 porcelain vases, and Qiao Xingzhong let out a loud shout and suddenly threw a stone ball, which was much faster than before. Li Yi remained motionless like a mountain, with Shimaru in front of him. His golf club swung out like lightning, with a crisp hitting sound, followed by bang. With a sound, the ball was moving too fast, and everyone had not yet seen Shimaru. The porcelain bottle on the far left had been smashed to pieces. Okay. Xiaobin clapped his hands excitedly, and he was the only one in the yard who cheered. The other polo players' faces were all unnatural. This stroke was too beautiful and flawless. The second one is here. Qiao Xingzhong threw the stone pill and inwardly exclaimed, "Oh no," he threw the ball off target, and Shimaru hit Li Ye's body. He should have moved forward before Li Yi could swing the club. Now that he's throwing towards his body, how can he swing the club? Qiao Xingzhong was about to say that this pitch didn't count, but to his surprise, Li Ye's body spun 180 degrees and his backhand hit Ishimaru with precision. Ishimaru shot fiercely, bang. The second porcelain bottle was smashed to pieces. Beautiful. Everyone couldn't help but applaud. This turn and backhand shot was indeed brilliant, and no one on the field could do it. Wang Shun's face was scorching, and this guy was indeed more powerful than himself. Xiao Bin was so excited that he shook his arms and said, 2 hits and 2 hits, brotherly one. Qiao Xingzhong was stunned. He didn't expect that he made a mistake in throwing a shot and the opponent could still hit him. It was his first time seeing him, and his son was right. This kid is really clever. His eyes gradually lit up and he chuckled loudly, brotherly, how about we have a double jump on the third hit? Everyone around was in an uproar. Li Yi leaned slightly and said, Uncle, could you explain what double jumping means? Oh. Qiao Xingzhong was even more surprised. Is this your first time fighting? This is my first time fighting, kid. I don't understand the rules. Qiao Xingzhong gave a thumbs up and said, this is the first time I've been so amazing. It's like being tempered through countless trials and tribulations. I'm so talented. In fact, he misunderstood. Making porcelain vases is his first time, but Li Yi, who made stone pills, has been practicing since he was 4 years old. It's really a case of trial and error. Of course, talent is another matter. Li Yi did not deliberately explain and listened attentively to him explain the rules. Double jumping is like the stone ball moving, and the porcelain vase also moving. Do you understand? Li Yi nodded, just hitting sports targets. He didn't know if he had practiced it before, but he had completely mastered that wonderful control and could hit anything. He once again adjusted his posture, held his breath, and remained calm, but the corners of his eyes were capturing the movement of the porcelain vase. The third porcelain vase was now held in the butler's hand. Start. Qiao Xingzhong suddenly threw the stone ball out in a very straight position, this time without deviation. At the same time, the butler also threw the porcelain bottle high. It is more than 10 times more difficult than the stationary bottle just now to smash the moving stone ball into the moving porcelain bottle. Of course, there are also experts who can do it, but none of the hundreds of servants in the Suning prince's mansion can do it. Li Yi squinted his eyes, and in that moment, a wonderful sense of control arose from his heart. He swung a stick and said, Pa. Shimaru flashed a gray shadow in the air, bang. With a loud bang, the porcelain bottle disintegrated in the air and was smashed to pieces. The yard was filled with cheers, it was simply too exciting. Qiao Xingzhong's eyes lit up, and he stroked his beard and smiled, this kid is a rare commodity. Li Yi was invited into the study, and Qiao Xingzhong waved his hand and smiled, please sit down. But there were only a few beds to sit on, which really made Li Ye's head grow bigger. He was most afraid of visiting wealthy households, unlike the poor who sat on stools or long benches. Rich households sat on beds and had to kneel down. How could his knees bear it? Xiao Xingzhong saw Li Ye's awkwardness and chuckled before sitting cross-legged. Li Gongzi, feel free. Li Yi also sat cross-legged, which was quite similar. The thing is like this. Xiao Xingzhong told him the reason for playing polo. The Tianda steward of the Suning prince's mansion has returned to his hometown for retirement. I am the second steward, and normally I should be promoted to the senior steward. But what about it? There is also a third steward in the royal household, surnamed Hu. His wife used to be the close maid of the queen, and he followed the path of a lady. The queen wanted this Hu third steward to be appointed as the chief steward. The prince didn't want to break the rules, but he didn't want to make the queen unhappy. So he came up with a solution. The prince loves polo the most, so he asked me and the steward Hu San to organize a horse racing team each. 10 days later, we will have a match, and the winner will be the steward. The queen also agreed. There is a difficult point here. There are hundreds of servants in the royal mansion. What the prince means is to select a polo player from the servants and not invite foreign aid. Do you understand? Li Xiaoga Li Yi said dejectedly. Uncle's point is, although I won just now, I still can't play this game for you. No. No. Li Gongzi misunderstood. I estimate the prince's intention is not to hire professional polo masters outside, but you are not, so there is still a glimmer of hope. I want to ask you to be a backup. Even if you don't have a chance to play, I will still give you 20 guan. If you can play, then it will be 50 guan. Regardless of whether you win or lose, what? What else can we do? I still owe Xiaobin 30 taels of silver. Li Yi nodded and said, then let's make a deal. At first, I called him Li Xiaoga, which felt good. I changed my name to Li Gongzi. Please vote in support. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. A New Look. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. A New Look. Li Yi said goodbye and left. Xiaobin asked his father anxiously, Dad, does Brother Li really not have a chance to play? Xiao Xingzhong sneered and said, do you think Hu Laosan didn't hire any foreign players? On the surface, he wanted Qi Yong to be his pitcher, but Qi Yong broke his leg at the beginning of the year and hasn't fully recovered, so he can't play at all. He showed it to me, making me relax my guard. I know he actually hired an external black pitcher. Polo is the national sport of the Tang dynasty, with an official organization called the Polo Bureau, which is under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of War and is similar to today's Chinese Football Association. To become a professional polo player, one must pass the examination of the polo department. There is also a polo federation under the polo department, consisting of 26 of the strongest professional polo teams, with an annual polo league. A registered polo player in the polo federation is called a white polo player and generally belongs to 26 professional polo teams. There is also a type of polo player who does not belong to any horse racing team and can be hired by anyone to play and earn money by playing. These polo players have also passed the examination of the polo department, so they are also professional polo players, but they are not registered with the Polo Federation. They are commonly referred to as black ball players, also known as free kicks. But the Tang dynasty was more tolerant and did not exclude such black ball players. As long as someone invited him, he could participate in any polo match, which is also considered a rule in the industry. The truth is actually simple. For example, nobles and nobles all know how to play polo and have passed the recommendation or examination of the Polo Bureau. They are actually black ball players, and discrimination against black ball players is naturally discrimination against nobles and nobles themselves. So setting rules must be flexible, and the key is to have someone invite you. No matter how well you play polo, if no one invites you, there is no chance to play and make money. Xiaobin understood, so my father also wants to hide Brother Li as a secret weapon. Xiao Xingzhong nodded and said, Hu Laosan has always had a grudge against me. If I let him become the chief steward this time, I may not be able to stay in the palace for long. Li Xiaoge is my special weapon. Xiaobin's mind was very agile, and he thought for a moment and said, actually, there is another way. Brother Li's football skills are so superb. If we find a way to show the prince his football skills, the prince will be moved by his love for talent, and his father will be credited. Can the prince use this as a reason to elevate his father to the position of chief manager? Xiao Xingzhong stroked his beard and smiled happily, saying, my son makes sense. It's only through recommendation that I can make a contribution. The prince will never treat me unfairly, but the good dishes will only be served at the end. Xiao Xingzhong suddenly remembered something and quickly asked, he's not a blackball player, is he? Absolutely not, Brother Li is a beginner. Please rest assured, father. In a garden of a mansion in Pingkangfang, a tall and thin man wearing military uniform is sitting at a table drinking tea, while a middle-aged man is standing with his hands down not far away. The man in the military uniform took a sip of tea and smiled slightly, saying, Jingwen, that child has recovered and seems to have become a person. It's impossible. The middle-aged man slowly turned around. He was tall and elegant, with a jade-white face, clear eyes, and short whiskers. He must have been a rare beautiful man in his youth, and his eyebrows and eyes resembled Li Yi 7 times. How has he changed? Is he no longer that stupid and crazy kid? The man's tone was obviously incredulous. He completely changed his personality. After recovering, he stopped fighting and instead convinced the wealthy children by playing polo. He also made friends with one of them and turned his conflict into treasure. Is there such a thing? The middle-aged man was somewhat surprised and said, what else? He's also sensible now. His mother was bitten by a venomous snake. What? The middle-aged man was surprised and said, Sanyang was bitten by a venomous snake. When did it happen? It happened the day before yesterday. Sanyang's life was in danger, but that child actually borrowed 30 taels of silver from a wealthy family's son, and then went to buy snake medicine from Wang Jishan overnight, saving his mother's life. He almost closed the shop door. How could he have such a mentality before? The middle-aged man pondered for a long time and sighed, help him return the silver for me. 30 taels of silver, where can their mother and son afford it? Sanyang is so stubborn, oh. I've decided to continue teaching him, the man in uniform said again. The middle-aged man smiled and said, didn't you say that his aptitude is too poor? He taught him how to play ball in the temple for 10 years, but he just couldn't understand. He has come to understand now, and he has come to understand very well, which surprised me. I really want to continue teaching him. He was just laying a foundation before, and I want to lead him to get started. If there is an opportunity, I can take him to the next level. Didn't you say before that you can't be the master? Now it's ready. The middle-aged man nodded and said, you are his uncle, you decide for yourself. I have no objection. The man in the military uniform saluted and left. The middle-aged man looked at the sky with his hands down and muttered to himself, is this fate? At noon, Li Yi was busy at home, chopping firewood, fetching water, cleaning the yard. Physical labor was his responsibility here, and he also had to make medicine for his mother. Buying firewood is very expensive. In the past, when my mother went outside the city to collect medicine, she would always bring back some firewood. His family did not have livestock, so it was Li Yi who carried back dozens of pounds of firewood. Of course, it is the predecessor of Li Yi, who has not yet had the opportunity to leave the city. A few days ago, an old locust tree in the back of his house withered away. Neighbors divided this tree, and Li Ye's family divided most of the main trunk, which was enough for their family to burn for a while. Li Yi was chopping firewood while considering making money. He needs three things to make money: channels, skills, and capital, none of which he has. For example, he could sell some things from later generations during the Tang dynasty. First, who would sell them to and who would buy them? Secondly, doing anything requires capital. Where is one's own capital? Of course, you can also find wealthy people to invest in. Even if you convince a wealthy person, the most likely outcome is that the wealthy person will take away all the achievements and make their own wedding clothes for others. For example, if you write a novel yourself, the cost is very low, just paper and ink. Firstly, simplified characters are not recognized in this era, and secondly, it is impossible to publish a book. Li Yi remembers very clearly that the first woodblock printed Diamond Sutra was printed in the 9th year of the Xiantong reign. More than 100 years later, it is still in the era of copying books. It is simply a pipe dream to make money from it. After thinking about it, only one's own abilities may be able to make some money, such as playing polo, where he actually earns himself 50 runs in a game. Although it's just a coincidence, it also indicates that his polo skills are worth this money. Otherwise, why didn't Xiao Xingzhong look for others and instead look for himself, a 14-year-old boy? At this moment, someone at the door asked, "Is Li Yi at home?" This is Xiao Bin's voice. How did he find his own home? "I'm here." Li Yi quickly went up and opened the door, and it was indeed Xiao Bin. Li Yi was a bit strange. According to the agreement, he should have gone to Xiao's mansion the morning after tomorrow to report. Why did Xiao Bin come? Xiao Bin saw Aunt Mu in the yard and scratched his head, saying, "Brotherly, there's something we need to talk about outside." Li Yi nodded and led him to a secluded place outside the house. "What's up?" Xiao Bin took out a heavy small bag and handed it to him. Li Yi opened it and was startled to find that it contained 2 silver ingots of white flour, estimated to be 20 taels. This is the money my dad has advanced to you first. If you play, I will give you an additional 30 taels of silver." Li Yi was puzzled and asked, "Isn't it true that your father usually doesn't advance payments?" Xiao Bin smiled bitterly and said, "I don't know what he thinks either. You can accept it. Your father took out so much money, would the family?" Xiao Bin waved his hand and smiled, "Don't worry, this is all the prince's money. The prince will bear all the expenses for this competition, and my father can't afford it." Since it was the prince's money, Li Yi accepted it with peace of mind. He handed the silver to Xiao Bin and said, "I'll pay you 20 taels first. After playing basketball, I'll pay you 10 guan more." Xiao Bin looked at Li Yi strangely and said, "Brotherly, don't you know?" "What do you know?" Li Yi was confused. "Someone has already paid off the 30 taels of silver you owe me." Li Yi suddenly widened his eyes and asked in surprise, "Who is it? When?" "I don't know who it is. It's around 30 years old, tall, thin, and powerful. It should be your relative, right? I came to my house early this morning and gave 30 taels of silver to my father." Li Yi was completely confused. Surprisingly, someone had paid off his debts on his behalf. Who could it be? Xiao Bin asked cautiously, "You really don't know?" Li Yi shook his head. "So are you still coming over to play basketball as usual the day after tomorrow morning?" Li Yi suddenly understood and smiled, "Your dad is afraid that I won't play basketball anymore, so he advanced the money to me, right?" End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Confusion and Confusion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 10. Mysterious Man. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Mysterious Man. Li Yi arrived at the wasteland behind the temple and saw a tall and thin man standing by the river with his back to him, wearing a long sword around his waist. Li Yi was truly amazed. This height is already 1.9 meters. "I've been out for half a year, have you been lazy?" The man spoke coldly with strong dissatisfaction. "Who are you?" Li Yi did not conceal his amnesia. The man suddenly turned around, in his 30s, with a thin and pale face and a long scar that was very shocking. His gaze was sharp like a knife, as if it could penetrate his body. Li Yi immediately felt that he had seen through all his secrets. You really can't remember who I am. The man squinted his eyes. Li Yi shook his head and pointed to the river, saying, it should be because the river has frozen over, I can't practice. Should it be? The man sneered, your tone is like talking about another person. Li Yi shook his head and said, I have forgotten everything from before, not even my mother. The man's gaze suddenly brightened up and he said, I know now, no wonder you broke through. Only by forgetting yourself can we regain unity. Only by forgetting yourself can we unite heaven and humanity. The more the man spoke, the more excited he became. He couldn't help but laugh up and say, what a coincidence. Who the hell are you? The man put away his smile and looked at Li Yi lightly, saying, we have been practicing playing polo together for 10 years. You never ask me who I am. I hope you don't ask me again in the future. One day you will know. Does my mother know about your existence? The man nodded and smiled, she knows, she's just pretending not to know, but don't misunderstand, I'm not your father. Li Yi nodded and said, if you were my father, she would have smashed your head with a hammer long ago. The man gave a bitter smile and said, you actually know her quite well. Li Yi no longer cared about his identity. He remembered something and asked, did you pay back 30 taels of silver? The man smiled and said, don't worry about these trivial matters. Let's talk about polo. How did you break through? Li Yi thought for a moment and said, when I swing, there is a feeling, a sense of control over strength and accuracy, that suddenly disappears. I capture this feeling, let it appear time and time again, and finally integrate with me. When needed, it will naturally come to mind. Show me, take your left eye. The man kicked a small stone with one foot and shot it lightning fast at Li Yi. Li Yi reacted faster, took 2 steps back, and swung a shot, saying, Pa. The stones flew like shadows, and the mud statue in the center was embedded in the left eye. Okay. The man gave a thumbs up and praised, it's better than I thought. Li Yi smiled and said, what do you mean is that I can graduate now? The man shook his head and said meaningfully, I taught you how to play polo for 10 years. What do you think I taught you? Li Yi looked at his long sword at his waist, and his heart twitched. You're teaching me martial arts. A child can be taught. The man praised, strength, speed, sharpness, and precision are the foundation of all martial arts in the world. Your foundation is already solid, and now you need to take it to the next level, where you can glimpse the martial arts world. Li Yi didn't interrupt him and listened to him continue speaking. The great way of the world is to achieve the same goal, both can be yin and yang, and the martial arts are the same. Returning to simplicity and simplicity, the martial arts of the world are nothing more than 2 words. Attack and defense. Li Yi smiled and asked, what does it mean to be both offensive and defensive, to be both offensive and defensive, to be both offensive and defensive? The man gave him a fierce glare and said, 3 years ago, I tested you once and you disappointed me. Today, I will test you again. I hope you don't disappoint me again. The man took off his sword from his waist and suddenly swung it upwards. The sword took off its sheath and flew straight into the sky, reaching a height of more than 10 jang. Suddenly, the sword's edge turned downwards, like lightning, stone fire, or a rainbow piercing through the sun. A cold light filled the top with an incredibly fierce aura and flew down. The man held the scabbard in his hand and looked at the sharp blade that flew towards him without moving, as if it were a giant stone standing for billions of years, or like an iron tree taking root. In an instant, the long sword entered the scabbard and the blade disappeared. This sword shocked Li Yi so much that his heart almost jumped out. How could there be such a sword-wielding technique in heaven and earth? He suddenly blurted out, "You're Pei Min." The man grabbed his collar and sternly asked, "How do you know?" Li Ye's countless thoughts surged in his chest, and he naturally knew that Li Bai's poetry, Zhang Su's calligraphy, and Pei Min's sword were known as the three wonders of the Tianbao era. Li Yi was truly excited. The mysterious man who had taught himself polo for 10 years was actually the sword Saint Pei Min. But how should I explain the prophet myself? The man was indeed Pei Min, who served as the commander of the 1,000 Bull Guard and was the famous first divine sword in Chang'an. 10 years ago, he began teaching Li Yi how to play polo, which actually laid the foundation for his martial arts. Pei Min let go of his collar and said dejectedly, "I know, your mother told you. Are you a relative of my mother?" Pei Min nodded and said, "You have grown up, and I won't hide it from you anymore. Your mother is my cousin. Since that's the case, why doesn't she see you?" Pei Min gave a bitter smile and said, "Without me, she wouldn't have known your father and wouldn't have fallen to where she is today." "I can't talk about falling." The word falling made Li Yi a bit harsh. Pei Min touched his head and apologetically said, "I used the wrong words, she didn't live well." Li Yi smiled and said, "I didn't call myself Pei Yi, which means my mother doesn't regret it. Besides, she doesn't know my father. How could she have me?" Pei Min's heart moved as if the stone that had been blocking her heart for a long time had been knocked open, and she suddenly became clear, "Right. For so many years, I never thought of this." He was in a good mood and patted Li Ye's shoulder heavily. He laughed and said, "You've really changed completely, you know. 3 years ago, I used that move and I asked you what you meant. You searched on the ground for a while and said I didn't hit the night bird." Li Yi couldn't help but laugh and said, "Uncle, this move is the defense in the attack and defense. You stinky kid, climb along the pole. Everyone likes smart children." Pei Min was in a great mood and finally recognized his nephew. He nodded and said, "That stick really enlightened you." "That's right, this is the guard in martial arts." Li Yi smiled and asked, "What about the attack?" Pei Min drew his sword and let go of it. He saw the sword shoot rapidly, shining with a cold light. The sword circled around the mud statue and flew back. Pei Min gently caught it, withdrew it and smiled, "This is an attack." Li Yi stepped forward and pushed the head of the mud statue, wondering, "But the neck hasn't been cut off. Take a closer look." Upon closer inspection, Li Yi suddenly realized that the small stone embedded in the left eye of the mud statue was gone. Looking down at the ground, Li Yi was suddenly shocked. The stone fell to the ground and was split in half. He murmured, "What kind of swordsmanship is this? It's completely unheard of. This is not swordsmanship." Pei Min walked over and said, "Do you understand? This is martial arts, an attack technique in martial arts." Li Yi nodded and said, "The great road of the world is one that leads to the same goal." "That's right, actually I know these two moves, attack and defense." Li Ye's eyes lit up and he said, "Uncle, will you teach me these two moves?" Pei Min stared at him and said, "Do you want to learn?" Li Yi nodded solemnly, "I think." Pei Min sighed and said, "These two moves are both difficult and simple to say, and the key is to understand. But if your level is not enough, you don't even have the opportunity to understand. Just like a 3-year-old child, if you teach him the heavy hammer method 1,000 times, he can't understand it because he can't even hold the 80-pound hammer. When he grows up and can swing the 80-pound hammer, he may understand it once. This is the level." Li Yi nodded and said, "Only by climbing high can we see far." Pei Min laughed heartily and said, "Stinky kid, come with me." Requesting recommended tickets, monthly tickets, and rewards. End of this chapter.